Welcome, world. We're here at Everybody Struggles. We got a dope, super dope guest. It's my buddy Chris. What's going on, brother?
Hey, not too much. Thank you for having me. This is really legit, man. You've been talking about this when we're living together, you know. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
The crazy thing is, I've known Chris. We were just talking about it right now. 18 years.
18 years.
Wow. Since freshman hoop.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me.
My pleasure.
You know, from corporate man to hair guy, you know, the world doesn't know a lot about you. I know a lot about you. If you could tell a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you're currently working on.
Absolutely. I'm Chris Lee. I'm from Berkeley, California. I'm fourth generation Asian American and half Japanese, half Chinese. And did high school in Berkeley, you know. That's where we met. Yeah. And, you know, we were hooping and then went out to college in Atlanta, Georgia. Yep. Went to Clark Atlanta. He went to Morehouse. So we also did, for people that don't know, we also did college together. Yep. And then after that, came back to the Bay Area and went into a little bit of my corporate life there. And I was in San Francisco. And you moved back then as well.
It's crazy.
After college.
Every time, like I did a little bit, moved after you.
You looped back, and then a little bit after trying to transition from outside of my corporate finance job, then moved out to LA, and then you also moved out to LA. And then for people that don't know, we also lived together in Los Angeles. So,
and Atlanta.
So that counts Atlanta, that counts college, that counts you know, out here in our adult years. And now I'm out in Los Angeles. I'm a hair colorist, and I'm at Nova Art Salon in downtown LA at The Row. And I'm also travel to do hair. I travel to San Francisco, Austin, and Miami, and trying to take it wherever, you know. My endeavors right now, I'm looking to just expand my business, get my brand out there, do as much hair wherever it could take me in the world. Try to really just focus on having fun. Like really, that's the big up thing for me now. After 2020 was a crazy time, really trying to just feel out what success, what that definition feels like for me, what happiness, what that definition feels like for me. And we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but I feel like so much of my life has been a focal point of living vertically, looking at that next goal. What's the next thing? And I'm at the point now where I realized I want to be much more horizontal as well as vertical. Right. Want to have that end goal, keep you in the right direction, but really trying to experience life as a whole. You know, I feel like so much of my life has been in the essence of not dying, right, as opposed to switching the script to be fully living, you know? And that's just something that's hit me hard lately because honestly, looking at, you know, we've known each other since youth, and then looking at us grow up to be men, it's been crazy because it's kind of like, these are some prime years, you know, it's like, it's gonna happen quick, you know? I mean, I think about when we first met and now it seems so short ago, but so long ago at the same time, you know, but then also knowing that, you know, we're all headed to the same direction. So trying to make the best of life, you know? So that's really what I'm working on, is happiness and keeping my business going, and, you know, the balance between trying to get successful financially as well as just in my own world on the inside, you know.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Definitely check out Chris, you know, he's a hair guy, you know what I'm saying? Like, you gotta really check him out at Nova. But yeah, tell us a little bit about growing up in Berkeley, you know, with the folks.
Yes, sir. Berkeley, the more that I've grown up, I've always felt very fortunate from growing up in Berkeley. I feel like the diversity that I experienced there was unmatched, you know? I mean, growing up as an Asian American kind of guy, it's just like, you know, I was exposed to so much, not only the Asian culture, and I found that very, very fun and very worldly. Like, I feel like as somebody where I grew up, I could step into any arena, you know, because growing up in Berkeley, I was, you know, with gangsters, I was with nerds, I was with wealthy people, I was with people in poverty level, you know, a lot of different mindsets, a lot of different ethnicities, a lot of different cultures. I mean, I even think back of, you know, childhood with my mom. She would put me in like any after school program, you know, just put me away for a little bit longer before I had to go home. And I remember even as what was it? I think I was in kindergarten. I was in an African dance class after school, and I swear that's probably where I get my rhythm from. Because, you know, I get down at the parties, so, you know, but I swear, you know, just things like that, or, you know, I would go to a quilting class after school or something when I was in my youth years, my juvenile years, and, you know, playing sports. Berkeley, I felt like it was the real world. You know, you think of the high school where we met, Berkeley High.
Too much shit going on.
You know, I mean, there you get everything. You know, you have the different races, you have the different subcultures of, you know, demographic of the wealth that people have. You have people that are struggling. You have people that have it easier, and whatever that may entail. Growing up very liberal, I feel like that was something very nice to just have an open mind to new ideas. You know, a lot of things didn't really scare me when it came to new ideas because we were exposed to that, you know.
All the time.
Berkeley with the activism and stuff like that too, it's wild. You know, I think of my parents and, you know, my dad growing up in San Francisco, he would say things like, oh yeah, I remember I'll be at Cal trying to, you know, UC Berkeley, trying to check out some ladies and stuff, and I'll run into Huey P. Newton. And, you know, he would say, he was like, yeah, I saw Huey before when he was first starting like the Black Panthers, you know, and coming from that essence of that history, I think is, you know, it was amazing.
There's
you know,
nothing you can compare it to.
yeah, I've really always enjoyed where I've come from, and I think it's helped me really navigate life to where I am today. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So the next question we're gonna jump into, it's gonna be a little bit more about yourself. What's the hardest thing that you've had to deal with in your life?
You know, this was a tough question for me. You know, I feel so fortunate with how you know, the family that I was brought into, and you know, I feel like my life has been pretty cush. You know, like I've been blessed to be surrounded by a lot of love, whether that be my blood family or my extended family, my chosen family. You know, but a challenge that I faced, and I wouldn't say it's like the hardest thing in life, but it was a big challenge I think that I was able to overcome, was coming from that corporate lifestyle. So right after college, me and you, both business majors, thought we had it figured out. You know, we're like, oh, I'm gonna get into
that
business.
ladder.
You know? This is what they tell us, right? You get a job, you get your degree, you get a job, you get a house maybe, be cush, and everything be sorted and settled. But changing into something else when I found out that that wasn't the path that I wanted,
Right.
and maybe going into something more creative, it was a daunting task, I guess, you know, coming from a job. I graduated in 2012 from college, and we're just starting to get out of the housing crisis. So even getting a job at that time, you felt like you were, okay, I'm kind of like beating what's going on right now, you know, in the way that the world's operating. But then you come to realize you're like, wow, you know, I'm really stressed out.
Yeah.
I used to work for a Big Four accounting firm, Deloitte & Touche in San Francisco. And for me, it was just that was one of the biggest culture shocks for me, going to corporate America. And when I realized that wasn't my cup of tea, I guess the daunting task was, all right, am I willing to take that jump and kind of bank on myself and how I want to live my life? We've been told a certain narrative, and there's comfort into thinking that the plan you've been told is the right one, you know? But then kind of questioning those things and kind of thinking about how do you want to write your chapters? And for me, hair presented itself. And I found that to be something where it was a daunting task. And that's why I don't say it's the hardest thing, because I wanted to make the jump.
Right.
But I guess the hardest part was jumping. And for me, it was kind of like, okay, even if this doesn't work out, I need to, you know, scratch that itch of that what if. I don't want to live in that what if, you know. Right. It's like I got to, you know, even if I fall on my face, I need to do that so then I'm not looking back with the what if. And I guess that was one of the hardest things for me. And it's interesting because once I made that decision, things actually became easier. But I think the hardest thing was actually having faith to jump off and see if, some wings gonna, come out and catch you.
Fly or fall.
Yeah, exactly. But once actually you make that jump, you almost realize that, you are able to dust yourself off no matter what, and that's just how life is. It's not just one jump. It's ebb and flows. And I guess that was one of the toughest struggles, I guess, going away from the financial stability and then kind of banking on this, bet of a new occupation, Luckily, our mutual friend, JP, he had, shout out to him, he really helped a lot in my hair journey. And he was like a little bit of a cheat code for me, because even to this day, he's, been a colorist now for, almost, since we've been out of high school, So he was always kind of like, oh, that's the next step that I could reach, And that was kind of something that helped me, continue my journey and know it's like there's greater things to come. But I think one of the hardest things for me was making that jump. Yeah.
So because you made this leap of faith, like what did you do to get yourself out of that situation? Like what made you get into that? All right, I'm gonna jump, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna get to wherever I need to be, to overcome it.
I think it was a mindset for me. I think I was, it was Kevin Hart's second comedy special, probably smoking some weed, and he was talking at the end, and he was breaking down, having a little tear moment, and he was like, oh, I just want to thank you for the people that's been here for my journey. And that's when something clicked for me. And the ratio in life that I've made up is that it's 2% finish line and 98% the journey. So when he was talking about the journey, that really resonated with me. And it was the mindset that helped me get through that, because the shift of what I was going through, when I looked at the people in the corporate life and I looked up the ladder, I was like, is this what I want? I thought about it. There was a couple cats that I liked there, that I was like, oh, these guys are my flavor, maybe I could get into their lifestyle. But when I heard certain things like, when I heard certain things like, oh, I have my wife plans vacations for me so I could see my kids. I'm like, oh, nah, when I have kids someday, I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna have time. It's not what I'm looking forward to, if that's what I have to look forward to. And then the day to day was always, oh, we're going out to the bar, we're complaining.
Happy hours all the time.
Yeah, and then it's like, whose day was worse? My day was worse. It's like, oh, this is unhealthy, So then when I thought about that term journey, I really thought about, okay, if it's 98 and 2, talking about percentages, I would rather get down with something that I could get down with for that journey on the 98%, even if it's struggle, even if it's hard. But if I'm down with that, that's the path that I want to take, because that 2%, as soon as you hit that finish line as an ambitious guy, you're an ambitious dude, you kind of forget all of that 98%, and then you're just back into that, trying to find that 2%. And we've talked about this a lot, we're going to die before we get the last carrot, as soon as we level up, we've already kind of forgotten all of where we came. We don't really look back as much as we need to sometimes. And for me, the biggest thing that helped me overcome was that I wanted to spend most of my life in something that I could get down with. And life is short, I feel like I've been having this conversation a lot with my clients, and I think it's interesting where America and Western culture is very, I can't speak for all the cultures, but it's one of the few cultures that looks at death as a negative thing. And in other cultures, it's just a part of life, and that's where we're all headed. So it creates a subtle difference of how you want to experience life. I feel like Western culture, American culture, we're kind of like, oh, I want to be young forever. I don't want to die. So therefore, you're living not trying to die, as opposed to living fully, like living fully, you know.
So then when that time does come, you're complete.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, cool.
Yeah, because we're all headed to the same, you know, path of that, you know, no question. I don't care what color you are, what type of, you know, being you are, what type of animal you are, whatever. If you're a plant, you know, it's circle of life, like Lion King, Simba type stuff, you know.
We all going 6 feet deep.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a big mindset for me that helped me. Yeah.
So the next question I wanted to ask you is, what are some of the life struggles that you've had in your life?
Life struggles for me would probably be, I've always had a chip on my shoulder as an Asian American male. You know, certain terms have just never sat well with me, you know. I mean, we've been boys since way back. I am one of the smaller guys, height-wise or just, you know, build-wise, but all y'all are college athletes, you know. You remember in Atlanta, I would walk around looking like I was my bodyguard.
Scotty, and Shabu.
Right. So, you know, a lot of our friends that we grew up with, they were pretty big dudes, you know. I'm say even the shortest. Yeah, Aaron's the smallest one, and you're like what, like 6'2", 6'3", yeah. And so, but I always hated terms, and even when, you know, people would be like, "Oh, you're the little Asian guy," or, you know, women would say something like, "Oh, you're cute for an Asian dude," and I'll be like, "Oh, what is that supposed to mean?" You know, and that's one of the struggles that I've always had an issue with, where like the media in our culture here, it makes the Asian male very emasculated. You know, it's like, I feel like we're starting to have a little shift in it, but, you know, just like any ethnicity, I think everyone kind of covers all the spectrums. You know, there's no just like, you know, we all have our stereotypes and stuff like that, but I've always had that chip on my shoulder where I've always wanted to bring the standard back to like a Bruce Lee level, you know, where everyone has a piece of the culture to come give, you know, and that's America, you know, where it's like we could give some of the culture that's a piece of you, but it's a melting pot, you know, it's like fusion food, you know, but culture-wise. And for me, I guess I've always had that chip on my shoulder, which I also know is something that I just battle with internally, because it's not something that has to be there, but also I choose to hold that weight, you know. So that's also on myself, that I struggle with that a lot. But I guess, you know, when those type of messages are always shoved down your throat, I always had just a little bit of something that just didn't sit right well with me, you know. I guess kind of being a little misunderstood in that way.
Right.
And then I guess also on the flip side, you know, I grew up primarily with a lot of Black people. So with my Asian people, sometimes it would be like, "Oh, why you so like street or so like ghetto or something," you know? And it's like, yo, it's like, we just people, you know. It doesn't have to be any type of thing, you know? So I guess I've always kind of felt like a wild card, you know, not totally accepted in one realm, and then in another realm also, like, you know, I don't look the same or something. So you have these other little things, but I think that has made a lot of power for who I am, though, you know. And I think of my upbringing of my mom being Japanese and my father being Chinese, and a lot of people don't know. Some people do, some people don't, but historically they're just not usually people that usually get together, you know, just because there's wars and stuff like that. So I've always felt like I got some of that from ancestry of just in my blood to kind of like shift the tide of any type of, you know, historical traditions or something that are nonsense. You know, it's like, nah, turn the chapter, let's make a new wave. So I've kind of felt like I've always kind of held that Asian factor has always given me a little struggle in my life, but the more as I mature, I realize that it's a me thing.
Right.
And coming into my own is how that will be able to be more understood by myself and other people.
Right. And it's crazy too, because these are conversations that we always have about the masculinity aspect of Asian, Black, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? And then also too, the acceptance thing. Like,
right.
You know, I had that conflict too. Like, people don't know I'm Black, but I'm Mexican too.
Right.
Like, straight up. Like, you know what I'm saying? So,
Yep.
you know, and that's some of the things that we were able to always talk about, because it was
Right.
something where we can kind of get an understanding. And it was cool too, because we grew up in Berkeley. We didn't have to worry about none of that
Yep.
stuff. We didn't care. Like, everybody was,
Yep.
you either hood or you not. You know what I'm saying? And then we were kind of like right in the middle.
Right in the middle.
And that's why we were easy to adapt to the environment, which was cool. So, you know, so because you dealt with these complexities, you know, these life struggles, what did you do, or what are you currently doing now to overcome them?
I think for me, I'm trying to embody more of how I was in high school, you know, and not so much of the juvenile mindset,
Right.
but of relinquishing all the social norms and standards that have really like made you an adult, you know, where you're just like, damn, I'm stuck to like a certain box, you know. And when we were younger, like you said, we weren't even thinking about any of that stuff, you know. You didn't even try to categorize yourself in a certain way. It was just, this is how you are, and we're gonna live each day like each day. And I think for me, it's trying to embody that same type of blissful ignorance of taking away all the outside sources. And how do I feel about myself? You know, at the end of the day, the way other people, this is an interesting thing actually, because when you said that, it triggered something in my brain where you think about how many decisions do I actually make based on how I feel and what type of decision I want to make, or is it based on how the outside people are going to think I am based on making that decision? And I think something that has helped me was trying to look at myself more transparently. You know, I feel like finally, as I'm getting more mature, I'm able to look at myself through a transparent lens instead of the man who I think I'm supposed to be. Right. I could start seeing myself clearer, so I could make adjustments to make myself the man that I want to be. And, you know, not judging myself as like, oh no, that's cool, you know, being able to check myself and be like, nah, that was weak, man. That was, right. You know, we need to adjust something there, you know. So I think being closer to self and tapping inward, because now at, you know, 31, you're noticing the buildup of how much outward has calloused your brain and your thought process. So I think for me, it's like shaving those things down and getting back to the core of like what I feel, and also not putting so much pressure on myself. You know, I feel like we grow up just trying to be 100 all the time, you know, but life's not 100, you know. It's like, it's ups and downs, and like, that's how you know you alive, you know. If you was 1,000 every time and you good at everything, it's like, that don't even mean you alive. That means you in some blissful place that is not even human, right. You know. But then for some reason we want to keep ourselves to that standard, and I think taking away some of that A+ mentality, that pressure, has really kind of helped me try to find that authenticity within myself. And I think that's a hard thing to do though, you know, because taking off that lens, that almost like a filter, right? You're filtering yourself like, oh no, that's the best look right there, you know. You know, but being like, nah, let's see the flaws and things, and being really able to look yourself in the mirror. Look at myself at the mirror. I think that has been the biggest help for me. Yeah.
That's great, man. And it's interesting you say that, because these are the things that we have to do. You gotta look within itself. You learn more about yourself, you learn more about the world and human behavior, like all this.
Right.
The next question I wanted to ask you is, what are some of the daily struggles you have that's holding you back from your fullest potential?
You know, I think about this with my business a lot, you know, and similar to the question that you had spoke about before, about how do I deal with some of that stuff and going authentically in, I also think as an artist, to really get your art out, you have to put your full self forward. And with those conflicts that I have sometimes of like, oh, you don't fit this Asian category, or the way that I talk might not fit into this thing, I have this mental block of, nah, you gotta mold it in a package that people can understand, you know. But then I think about what would make me thrive, or when I think of successful people, you know, I think of like Nipsey Hussle, or I think of Marshawn Lynch, you know, like Matt Barnes, Steven Jackson, when they're doing their podcast, stuff like that, or I Am Athlete, you know, guys that are being authentically true to themselves, I think are very successful because they're putting themselves forward. And that's what the world, I feel like, needs, is people being open enough to be themselves, to give that. And I think for me, that's the same thing, where I just need to tap in to my authentic self and not be afraid to show that, you know. And that's why I'm totally glad that I'm here today, because this is something that we've spoken about way before any of all this has been into play. And you've always pushed that line. And, you know, it's interesting now to where I'm at in life and when I could do this interview right now, because exactly, you know, and it's definitely embodying that energy of pushing myself forward, not being afraid to let people know Chris as him authentically. Right. So I think that would be the most beneficial for me, of really just being true and showing the world that, and not being afraid that it might not be accepted a certain way. Right. Because honestly, when I think about anything, people could always relate to authenticity. Doesn't matter if it's packaged in a way that you understand personally or not, but if it comes from a real place, that's just something that anyone can relate with.
That's beautiful, man. So what are you doing now, you know, to get to that authentic place, you know, present that to people, and also continue to keep being that person?
Yeah, I think it's just exploration. You know, how do I want to express myself in things, and kind of looking at things are so similar, like how you do one thing, you do everything, right? So how do I want to dress? How do I want to present myself? You know, how do I want to speak? You know, and just kind of diving in and exploring. Right. So then you could be like, oh no, that is me, or trying new things. And I think just trying to do new things has helped me find who I really am, you know. And, you know, I remember I think it was either me and you and Mark, like we would just say stuff when we were leaving. Yeah, you know, like when we're in the loft, and be like, yo bro, have a good day, stay dangerous, do something new today, you know. And I have trouble doing that, but when I do, I feel the benefits of that. Right. And I think that is something that has helped. Anytime that I've, you know, took off some of those fear, you know, or not even taking off, like facing it and finding your authentic self, I think it just brings more strength. Right. And I think the exploration for me is something that has started to help me get a little momentum with finding the true self of, you know, doing new things, you know. The equation of me doing the same things and thinking I'm going to get a different outcome is weird, right? Like that's like the definition of insanity or something. And for me, that's like something that I'm trying to really challenge myself, because I'm a person of habit, loops, and I'm trying to make that a loop. And I think that exploration of myself will definitely help me. It has helped me kind of figure out how I want to define myself and what's truly me.
So the next question is, because you've been through what you've been through and you're here now to where you were, what's your outlook on life now?
Now, to me, it's connecting the dots of the definitions. My pops always gave me game growing up, and and one of the things he told me for any of my goals, he would always be like, all right, look at life as a ladder. You know, you got the two bars of where you're trying to get to that hold the ladder together, and then you got the rungs. So put the goal at the top, and then start thinking backwards. Put those rungs in there, and then just take it a step at a time. You know, line it up and knock them down, you know. And for me, I've always used that in a lot of things that I've gone through in life. And that approach, I guess, has helped me look at those definitions of like happiness and success. And I think that's my outlook of really trying to get to those things. And happiness for me, I've noticed, is pretty simple, you know. I had a moment in 2020, and even before I tell that moment, I realized, like, when I came to LA, I was like, oh, I'm gonna get rich, I'm gonna have all this money, and I'm gonna just do whatever I wanna do. And then when 2020 hit, we're all just inside, right? And then I had this moment. I was at my big brother's house, and I was frying some chicken outside, drinking some beers with my big bro, chopping it up about life. And then my little niece comes out. She's like, "Uncle, what you doing?" You know, and I was able to, you know, my brother's wife, my sister-in-law, and her sister, they were inside getting some time to relax, and they've all done a lot of things for me in life. And when I was able to provide a meal for them, my, you know, big sister's chilling, you know, her sister's chilling, my brother gets to chill, my little niece is there, you know, and I was like, this is it for me. Like when it really comes down to like meat and potatoes, it's like being able to provide something for my family, getting to experience that, see the next generation coming up, being surrounded by love. It was like, I felt very full. Right. And how much of life can I make feel like that? And I think that's my outlook, you know, of like finding that definition, putting that rung at the top, building it backwards, get to that. Oh, and then that comes back to exploring new things, you know. There's only one thing, you know, we don't have to be defined by one definition, you know. Currently it could be this, next day it could be that. And I think that's my outlook of like really, you know, setting things up and then following through. Yeah. And those definitions change, success and happiness. It's always different, but I think for me too, my outlook now is I want to just live like weightless, you know, and feel fully. You know, what we talked about earlier about either not dying or living fully. Yeah. I think for me, I realized how much I haven't lived like this, but I yearn to, where it's like I want to feel the anger fully. I want to feel the sadness fully. I want to feel, you know, the love fully, the heartbreak fully, you know, the joy. The sadness, the happiness, you know, the yin and the yang. I want to just feel it all, because what more is life than to live it, rather than being like bubbled in. And then you look, you're a raisin, you're old raisin, and you're like, damn, I've lived two steps back from the ledge, you know. I would rather push myself as close to that edge until it's time. It's a tough feat. I don't think I've tapped into half of that yet, but I think that's my mindset now going forward, is trying to really capture the essence of living fully.
That's beautiful. So what's your ultimate goal in life?
Ultimate goal, I think it is still that happiness, you know, knowing that happiness also comes with the sadness though. And ultimate goal of life, what more is it to live? I listened to this YouTube yogi guy's named Sadhguru, and it hit me. He said something, he was like, you know, if you wake up tomorrow, and then people started laughing, and then he was like, nah, see, that's why y'all play around too much, you know? And then he was like, nah, if you wake up tomorrow, like smile and be grateful, because, you know, all these people in the pandemic, people dying, or just, you know, how we grew up. A lot of our high school friends, they're not here today, you know, and that was before we even got to college. Yeah. And he said, what more is life than to live? So I think for me, life equals like living.
So my last and final and favorite question is, if you were to give someone advice that looks like you or that has been through the same things as you, what would you tell them?
I would say do any and everything. Feel fully. Don't be frightened to try whatever it is that you want to try out. I think anything is possible, and there are no boundaries, like really no box, no limit type stuff. I think if you box yourself in, then you are that, you know, and I think there's just beauty in falling, you know. It's more about how you dust yourself off and get up more than how you show up in first place. I think life's more about the failures than it is about the successes. So not to be fearful of starting something that feels scary because you might fall. And, you know, even saying this game, you know, I'm speaking to myself on that. You know, there's certain things where you get frightened because, you know, that perfect look that you need to have, how people see you, you know, and not worrying about how people feel about you, and more about what type of endeavors and challenges do you want to put yourself through. To see where you come out, you know, don't be frightened. I feel like being yourself is something that is always the best move, you know, so you can feel and move weightless. And if you fail, that's fine, you know, and if you succeed, even better. But don't live on the end of not trying something.
Yeah.
Whether that comes with the simple thing of a new hairdo, a new sense of style, going to speak to somebody, trying something new, learning a language, and don't box yourself into what you think people think that you're supposed to be.
Right.
Live life in a way that you would be happy looking later on. I think for me too, it's thinking about legacy. You know, what kind of path can we leave? You know, I think you probably feel the same way with doing something like this. You know, it's like, what are we doing for, you know, what are we leaving here? You know, there's much more to it. So treat life as such. Yeah.
Well, thank you for the powerful words. I really, really appreciate you. It's been a long time coming, but we've been talking about this for a while.
Yes, sir.
If anybody has any questions, comments, leave below. Please follow Chris on social media.
Instagram, yeah. Christopher Daniel. It's all spelled out. Christopher and then Daniel, but the A in Daniel is actually the letter V.
Check them out. Check them out at Nova too. And then watch out for the next episode.
All right, no problem. Appreciate you.
I just want you to know you are not alone.